Hello everybody! In today's video I want to talk about one of the most important skills a designer can have, and I think it's only becoming more and more relevant today than it was yesterday. I'm talking about storytelling. So in this video I want to break down what storytelling means in the context of industrial design, but also how we can use it, how can we apply it to sell our concepts and design, to elevate them, give meaning to these concepts and ideas, and also I want to look into why storytelling still matters in the age of AI, where more and more content is being created by artificial intelligence. So if you're curious and want to learn more about storytelling, then you should watch this video. Also, feel free to like and subscribe. Thank you very much. So why is storytelling important, right? And in order to clarify why storytelling is relevant, I want to start with introducing an example that is outside the field of industrial design, but still within the creative field. And this is art. So the picture, the image, the painting that you are seeing here is a well-known painting. Some of you might know it, some maybe don't. I'm curious what your first associations are when you see this painting. Like, what do you feel? What do you think about it? Does it evoke any emotions or not? Does it carry any meaning to you? Do you know the artist behind it or not? So all these aspects are relevant also for storytelling, right? So when I first saw it, and I haven't seen it in real life, just digitally, I was like, okay, well, it's not like it looks bad, but I feel like it's easy, right? It's very simple. I could have made this painting. So that's the first thing that I thought. So okay. So I didn't even bother looking into it any further. And then it kept coming back. And only once I started to learn more about the painting, I understood the value and the story behind it, right? So I want to take this moment also and give you some insights into the background of this painting. So try to think about the first associations and remember them. And after I told you all these things, let's go back to the question of what it means to you and see if there's any difference now, right? So this painting was created by an American artist called Barnett Newman, and this specifically is called the Onement VI. So what does that tell us? That this painting is part of a series, of a group, where at least 5 other paintings that are also called Onement exist, right? And here are the other 5 images of the Onement. We see there's like a constant theme. So we already know, all right, the last one belongs to a bigger, larger whole, right? So does that change our perception of the initial painting that we saw or not? I want to add more details to it, right? So what if I told you that this painting, specifically the Onement VI, has been sold for almost $44 billion, a huge amount of money, especially if you think like this is something that I could have painted. That's what I say at the first impression, right? And also in terms of the whole series, it's the biggest of the series, right? So it's almost 260 by 3 meters in dimension. So it's like a huge canvas. You have to imagine, like you're standing in front of it, it's gigantic. And I'm also wondering, does that mean something to you when you hear that this painting is part of a series, it's the last one, and it's the biggest out of the 6? All these details, they add to our understanding of what we're looking at, right? They give depth and create meaning around the aspects of this whole thing, but I'm not done yet. So Onement VI is a painting by Barnett Newman, as I mentioned, and it overwhelms and seduces the viewer with the totality of its sensual cascading washes of vibrant blue, right? So I'm reading now a description of one of the museums where I got this information from, and I'm wondering, does that description evoke a certain emotionality in myself? Does that do something with me? Can I connect the words to the painting, right? Do I feel overwhelmed or seduced by the sensuality of this whole painting or not, right? And I think it makes a huge difference if I see this in live context, in live size also, or just digitally on the screen. Okay, now I want to give you more insights into the thoughts behind these paintings that the original artist had in the first place, right? And Onement I was, according to the painter himself, the artist, a symbol for the very acts of creation and revelation. So Newman remembered this painting as a profound moment and change of his career and his entire life. So I quote now some words that he said about this painting, the first one, and the series overall, right? So I recall my first painting that is where I felt I had moved into an area for myself that was completely me. And I painted it on my birthday in 1948. This was a painting where the artist felt like he achieved something, that he went beyond and something he never achieved beforehand. And it was painted on a special day to the person, the artist himself, right? And then it goes further saying, I done this painting and stopped in order to find out what I had done. And I actually lived with that painting for almost a year, trying to understand it. I realized that I'd made a statement which was affecting me and which was, I suppose, the beginning of my present life, because from then on, I had to give up any relation to nature as seen. I remove myself from nature, but I do not remove myself from life. So again, you see how deep of an impact this initial painting had to the original artist, that he had to take a break from his entire creative pursuits just to understand what he had created in the first place, right? So he's also saying that he doesn't understand the full depth of his creation, even though he is the creator. And albeit this picture and painting is so simple, right? So I think this is very interesting and tells a lot about the artist, but also about what this whole series potentially means. So now when we go back to the Onement VI, I'm asking you, do you feel like anything changed after learning more about this image, the artist, the original implication for the artist himself and what he understood these paintings to represent, right? And for me, it changed a lot because I understand the value of storytelling. This is also nothing else than a story that I just told you, right? The background story of this image, the sales story. And it created meaning. Now I have completely different associations with this painting. Now I feel like I could create something that looks like this painting, but I would never be in a space that would allow me to create such meaningful work and depth with a piece that looks like this. So that is a radical difference between me as a designer and the original artist and his intentions behind it. How can we now take this idea and translate it to industrial design? For many of the objects in our daily lives, we do understand that there is some sort of history and tradition that goes with these objects, especially for like well-known brands like Apple, right? We understand that there's an evolution of these products, that they started somewhere before they became what they are today, that there's like this whole thing around Steve Jobs, right? That he left the company at one point and then came back and then everything started to blow up and it's like the most used phone from all time and so design-oriented, innovative, right? All these things, but we also can dig even deeper and see that there was a history with the iMac before the iPhone existed, right? And that it meant a lot to the people at the time back then. So all these associations also now, like John Ive, the creator of many of the designs that we know so much, right? And how he was influenced by Dieter Rams, all these things that for us, now they are reflected within the objects that we carry around. Even though they are not expressed with every single object, they don't tell you like Steve Jobs' story, right? They don't tell you John Ive designed this. But if you're design interested, then you potentially know. And over time you learn more and more to appreciate and understand the tradition and the heritage of a brand that it may carry. And that also does create a lot of meaning. Imagine now, Apple, you would never heard about Apple in your entire life, right? And you get to see the new iPhone. I'm pretty sure that your understanding of what the iPhone means and if it's so great or not would be completely different from the person that you are today, knowing all these things about the past, about Apple, about its meaning and impact on the global design world overall, right? So keep that in mind. So we can also take this to our advantage by hinting at tradition, hinting at the history of an object, by presenting it, by speaking about the backgrounds and the reasons, intentions behind ideas and why they are the way they are. Right, so and the next image that I'm showing you is the design that I did for Whitetext back then. And what I want to show here is that even if you don't know anything about a brand or the object, the product itself, there's still meaning that you can instill as a designer into an object, right? And this can be done through color. This can be done through shaping, through forms, right? Through materials, but also the way the object is being presented, composition, marketing, all these aspects are within your field as a designer, are your tools to create meaning, to tell a story about a project and product that is not understood potentially by your clients or people that are supposed to buy the stuff, right? So if you look at this image, potentially I achieved in establishing some sense, right? Some meaning. When I look at this, then maybe you notice that we have these shoulders and these feet that are protruding, right? And they give a very sturdy and stable appearance. This machine, you have to understand, weighs several tons. And there's heavy machinery in there. There's wires going in one end and they're coming out from the other end. They're being cleaned. So there's a lot of power also in there. So it also has to be perceived to be sturdy because no client would buy a machine with that purpose that looks like small and cute, weak, because the purpose is a different one. Also, just graphically speaking, I placed the line here graphically as a symbol, also as a reference to the wire that is going through the machine. Even if not explicit, you potentially get a grasp at least of the meaning that I try to instill in the design language of this overall thing. So I'm not saying that every good design has like loads of backstory or heavy history, but usually good design often succeeds in conveying certain meaning without having to explain it a lot, right? It's very understandable and intuitively understandable especially. I'm presenting you these very different shoes, and I don't tell you anything about them. You might have a preference, right? Just a personal preference in terms of aesthetics, right? But if I tell you some background, maybe you change your mind, maybe you don't, but at least you get a better understanding of why things are the way they are, right? So for on the left, for example, my idea was to merge the traditional with the modern, right? We have a 3D printed shoe that looks like the classic design, even exaggerated this design language by applying these floral ornaments on the top surface. And at the bottom surface, though, we see something that looks very different, like roots almost. And this is because it's the surface that touches the ground. Like, this is where our roots are connecting to our past. This is what we have been doing. So I'm trying to show like something modern that looks also modern, aesthetically pleasing. And I feel like the roots do represent this, because we are capable now to design things that look more organically, that represent nature in a way. And yet the symbol that it does create is speaking of the past, is speaking of the roots, of the groundedness that is, I think, very strongly related to shoes, right? So now if you know this about the left concept and don't know anything about the right one, you might still prefer the right one, but you feel like you understand better now what the idea was behind the left one, I suppose, right? At least that would be the goal. For the right one, the idea was to use waves as the original inspiration, right? The shoe is called the Street Surfer. And the idea was that we have this wave aesthetic, right, which is cool. And I think one of the key features are these distinctive lines that go from the front all the way to the back and then almost cut the shoe into pieces. And what this is supposed to be meaning is that it is supposed to represent impact. That every time you place your foot onto the ground, it shakes up your foot and the shoe, right? And like a wave, it propagates through the design. And this is indicated by the lines. So again, the preference might not have changed, but by allowing you or your client to understand the meaning behind your design decisions, it's much more likely to be chosen or to be further evolved because they have a stronger emotional reaction. They have a clear association, not just random. It's not just aesthetics. There's more behind it. In the company that I worked a couple of years ago, we also had a lot of contact with students and had interns with us, right? And there was often a discussion about this whole stuff. Like, is this not just made up bullshit, right? Even if I, as a designer, say that this is supposed to reference the roots of a tree, whatever, tradition, right? I just made it up, right? So in the end, it's just an image. Is that still meaningful if it's just made up? And I think, yes, it becomes meaningful if you are able to explain it. If you get the chance to, you can create this meaning by explaining it, or with your marketing message, you can manifest and strengthen meanings that are potentially not as clear to everybody as they should be or could be. So even if they are thought up, they are still highly valuable. And now we get also into the moments where I feel like this is very, very relevant for today's design world, where more and more images are being created by AI, right? And concepts even. So if we look at these AI generated images, just prompt based, right? So I didn't really design them. I just asked for several things. Can we give meaning to those AI images even if there was no clear intention? So I haven't specified all the meaning of these parts or how they relate to each other, and certainly the AI didn't, right? So there is basically a blank space. We're looking at an image and we can just infer meaning from what we see based on our experience or our own personal preferences, but we can also use that to strengthen the idea, to make it come to life, to sell it, and to form like a truly meaningful design with like something to say, with a story to tell, right? We just don't make up random facts about it. We lean on existing associations and elaborate, right? For example, if you look at the speaker, so we have a wooden base and a spherical object at the top. It's very minimalist, I would say. So that's just facts, right? There's nothing that I just made up. So now we could say that the wood base is the place of this object that connects to the surrounding. And the surrounding of this speaker is potentially the living room environment or the living environment as a whole. And there we have a lot of furniture that is wooden. So this wooden base can function as a transition between the audio space and the living space. And in that sense, it could work really well. And therefore, we can now make like a clear argument for why this should be wood. I mean, we can also make this from plastic, but then the connection to the living environment becomes less strong, right? Or it's spherical. So why is it spherical? We can try to feel and understand if there's certain sense behind it, right? Potentially this indicates that you can take it away or you can position it in different directions, right? Suddenly it becomes an omnidirectional speaker. So we take associations that we have and we elaborate, right? And the same goes for the other examples here. These are examples that I used also in previous videos where I talk about them more specifically. But for example, if you look at the couch, right? Obviously these are Japanese graphics designs. And in the video, I was talking about why this is not a Japanese couch. It's just a couch with a Japanese graphic layer on top. And I still think that's the case because the aesthetic of the couch itself is not typically Japanese. It's just the graphics. But if we want to make this a truly Japanese one, we can try to emphasize by actually getting like material source from Japan, getting original art work from Japanese artists, also using materials overall from Japan, and sell this as a unique blend of classic Western design language and Japanese tradition in artwork and materials, right? And suddenly this becomes more meaningful. Suddenly this goes beyond just a couch with a Japanese graphic layer, right? So we can create meaning and translate associations into a next level understanding. And what I find interesting, or an experience that I had, is I sketched something and I presented my idea to my former boss, right? Great designer also. And I was not really a big fan of my own idea. Like I showed it and I was talking about it and I said like what it was. And then I don't remember exactly what he commented on it, but he saw something in the concept that I didn't see. He like created an association that was not obvious to me, but after hearing it from him, I immediately was able to appreciate my own concept much more, because he pointed to something that I didn't understand that was actually still in the concept, that was in there, that I could now, with this understanding, bring more to the front and make it like an entire new whole design, right? So what I'm saying is that talk about your designs with other people's and utilize their associations to create stronger meaning, embed more story into this object. And don't be fixated on your own story and your own meaning, even if you're the creator. All right, that was it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you liked this way of presenting, where I try to make clear what I mean with storytelling, where I try to explain to you how meaning is being created in concepts and designs, even though they are just created from a prompt potentially or from a sketch, right? But there's so much to storytelling. Try to understand and use it for your advantage. Try to create concepts with meaning and a story to bring them to life, to create emotional associations and connections with clients that will forget your ideas much less likely, that they will keep them in mind, think about them, evolve them in their own heads into further ideas and further associations, bigger stories, right? So I really hope that this video helped you, and I hope to see you for the next video. Thank you a lot.